The Concordia Student Union, also known as the CSU, held a student council meeting this week to pass a motion which would lead to a vote among all Concordia students. The motion follows. Do you support the CSU to adopt a position against the practice of apartheid, as defined by leading human rights organizations such as Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International, and to divest from any investments and withdraw any financial or vocal support from states or businesses that are involved in apartheid? If this motion passes, it will be presented as a referendum question in this year's CSU elections. So why is this a local issue? The contention between differing opinions on Israel-Palestine has been a hot topic on Concordia's campus for a long time. In 2002, then Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was set to visit Concordia's campus, invited by Jewish student organization Hillel Concordia. Netanyahu never made it to the campus as a protest broke out, leading to one of the windows of the hall building being broken. This motion follows last year's bombing of Gaza by the Israeli military, which not only led to international protests against the Israeli occupation, but thousands in the streets of Montreal protesting. So how is this motion timely, and what are its ties to Israel-Palestine? Amnesty International recently summarized a 300-word report published on the 1st of February assessing the Israeli occupation in Palestine. The summary read, "Massive seizure of Palestinian land and property, unlawful killings, forcible transfer, drastic movement restrictions, and the denial of nationality and citizenship to Palestinians are all components of a system which amounts to apartheid under international law." Stay tuned to watch what happened at the CSU Council.
So we'll start with approval of the agenda. And at this point, if anyone has anything to add, remove, amend, pull, anything like that, the time is now. Any amendments to make? Amendments going once, twice? All right, so if there's nothing to amend, I just need a motion from the floor to approve the agenda and all items under consent.
I motion to approve the agenda and all items under consent.
All right, thank you, Kate. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, I think I saw Jeremiah first, seconded by Jeremiah. Is there any opposition to approving the agenda and all items under consent? Opposition going once, twice. All right, so that carries unanimously, and we can move on to, we have no presentations or guest speakers. So we do have a couple of appointments on the agenda. These were committees that hadn't been filled previously. So we have the Concordia Council on Student Life. Malcolm, do you want to give a quick intro to the committee and how many times it meets?
Yeah, hi. Okay, so Concordia Council on Student Life is a university committee. It's chaired by Andrew, the Dean of Students. So we're meeting about 2 more times for the rest of the year, just to go over student applications for funding. Yeah, it's very fun to see like what student projects are going around, and yeah, it's a great chance to get involved.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone who'd like to nominate themselves or somebody else for the committee, since there's one counselor seat currently open? If anyone wants to nominate themselves or someone else, I just figure if I repeat it, maybe folks will be inspired to join. If not, it'll come back at the next meeting.
All right, so
CCSL. All right, so if there's no interest right now, then I'll consider this point back on the agenda at the next meeting. That said, if folks are inspired during question period and business arising, we can revisit appointments as well. Just
for the appointment, would how many times would we have to table it before we hand it over to appointments committee?
Well, right now it's a counselor seat, so it has to be filled by a counselor unless there's a motion to open it up to students at large. So there's nothing in the policy that would explicitly cover that, but it would have to not.
We would need a motion for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that said, yeah. So we'll move on to Mental Health Committee, and Harrison, this one is yours. Oh yeah, Hirsch, go ahead.
On the previous agenda, I'd like to motion to notwithstand the pertinent policy and forward it to the Appointments Committee.
Right. Malcolm, the only question is because that is an external committee. It's not one in our own policies. Is it the university's policies that has counselor seats?
Good question. I don't know the answer.
Yeah, because we can do that for standing committees, but I don't believe we can do it for CCSL.
And I might have the answer.
Yeah, I'll just double check the policy, but can we stand that down for now until we get a concrete answer, Hirsch?
Sure.
All right.
Unless Hannah has an answer.
Oh yeah, Hannah, do you have one right away?
From my knowledge of the policies, the university stands as just students, so it's not specified. So it's our specification to have counselors. But I'm double checking right now, but I'm pretty sure it's not in there, so we can do this.
All right. I am also double checking just to get the exact wording, just to make sure. Yeah, anyways, we'll go to Mental Health Committee and then just revisit that in a sec. If Hannah, you can find the exact wording, I think it's in the university's policy, just to make sure if it's student or counselor, and then we can move on with that. Harrison, do you want to introduce Mental Health Committee?
Yes, sure, absolutely. So mental health is the best committee. Well, actually, it's tied with clubs in my own personal opinion. But yeah, it's a committee that we've worked on basically since the beginning of the summer, since June, working on the implementation of a fee levy, providing mental health services to students. So that has been the goal of our committee basically throughout the entire mandate so far. Ikram sits on the committee, other counselors as well. Our goal now is to continue that consultation phase and actually implement based on the discussions that we've had with counselors on that committee and other bodies and get that service started. So yes, and also just bringing up the concerns of mental health, lack of services on campus, and preventative mental health measures as well. Faye can chip in if I'm missing anything.
Yeah, Faye, go ahead if you want.
Oh, yeah. So basically right now we're just working on ways that we can improve mental health services for students. And we've spoken to a lot of different student groups as well as different university departments. And we're actually working together right now on developing something that hopefully can last to next year. And yeah, so if you're interested in working with us on that, it'd be really great.
And just for everybody's knowledge, the committee meets every second Tuesday from 11 to 12. Yes.
All right, thank you. Is there any interest in sitting on the Mental Health Committee? If anyone wants to nominate themselves or someone else? Mental Health Committee. Give it another couple seconds. Mental.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Ikram. 12 to 1, not 11 to 12. That's clubs. Yeah, thanks.
Awesome. That is good to know. That said, Mental Health Committee, anyone? All right, so there's no counselor interest. Hirsch, since we got an answer from Hannah about the policy on CCSL, I'll entertain your motion. Do you want to do both committees or just CCSL?
Sure, I'll do both.
All right.
I'll second the motion.
All right, so Jeremiah second. So the motion on the table currently is to open up the seat on CCSL and the seat on the Mental Health Committee to a student at large to be filled by Appointments Committee, correct? Is that the right wording?
Sure. And then obviously be it further resolved that the budgetary impact of this motion is nil.
Right. All right, thank you. Michelle, did you catch all that?
Can we get it in writing in the chat, please?
Yeah, sure, no problem. I'll type something up just so that we have wording. The policy on, oh gosh, what's the exact wording? The policy on council and committees. Resolve budgetary impact of the motion is no. There we go. So that is good. And the exact section of the policy on council and committees is, let me just get there. It is, so we have wording. It is subsection, nope. It is.
Oh, correct me if I'm wrong. The mental health one is an ad hoc committee.
Yeah, it is. I'm just realizing that. Yes, it was not codified. All right. So in that case, it would just be notwithstanding the motion previously passed to decide how many people are on it.
The main question would be CCSL.
Yeah. So CCSL is also life.
I think Hannah has the answer.
Oh, Hannah, do you have it?
CCSL is not actually mentioned in the policy.
Also noticing that as well. All right then. So we don't have to know
for withstanding the policy.
Sorry.
So there's no need for withstanding a policy right now.
Okay, well, that is good then. All right. So in that case, you can scratch the notwithstanding part, and we are good to go. So is there, or did you want to motivate Hirsch?
Okay, so I guess it's fairly straightforward what the motion is and why it's there. We currently have these seats open to councillors. It's shown up several times. I don't remember offhand the exact number at the council meetings. So far, no councillor has said that they want the seat. I figure it makes sense to send it to Appointments Committee to allow students at large to apply.
All right, thank you for that. Is there anybody else who wants to speak on the motion? Speakers list going once, twice. All right, so in that case, we can move to a vote. Is there any opposition to opening up the councillor seats on CCSL and Mental Health Committee to students at large? Opposition going once, twice. All right, so that carries unanimously. Oh, sorry, did someone say something? Yep. All right. So we are a lot of people in the meeting. So just a reminder to please mute yourself if you are not speaking. And we have no returning business. We can move on to the new business substantive. And this is position against apartheid to go to referendum. Hassan, this one is yours.
Thank you, Caitlin. Whereas the CSU represents the undergraduate student body at Concordia University, and whereas it represents several human rights issues such as Black Lives Matter, LGBTQ2+, anti-Semitism, and migrant rights that have all been sent to vote before by the CSU Council. Be it resolved that the following question be sent to referendum in the 2022 election. And I quote, do you support the CSU to adopt a position against the practice of apartheid as defined by leading human rights organizations such as Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International, and to divest from any investments and withdraw any financial or local support from the states or businesses that are involved in apartheid? And please be it further resolved that the budgetary impact of this motion is nil.
Great. Thank you, Hassan. Do we have a second for the motion?
Second.
Second by Butena. And your motivation, Hassan?
Yes, Caitlin. As you can see from the attendance, this question is brought forward with the intention, with no intention of being amended. As a counselor, a great number of students have come up to me requesting that the CSU take a more proactive role in its stances, specifically against apartheid, given global geopolitical situations. As a counselor, it is my responsibility to listen to the student body and represent their voices and interests to the best of my abilities. Thus, my motivation in presenting this motion is to fulfill the calls of the student body.
All right, thank you. So at this point, I will open the floor to discussion.
Can someone copy paste the motion in the chat?
Yeah, it was sent out with the document. So if you check your email, it should be there as well. But I can, sometimes the chat doesn't allow paste though. So I'll try, and if not, then you can check your email.
Okay, I'll check it now anyway. So it's...
Sure, I'll just paste out. Oh no, okay, it does. All right, so that is the wording of the motion. And I will, open the floor to discussion. All right, discussion going once. Harrison, go ahead.
Yes, I'll just put on my camera. There we go. So I would like to start off by saying thank you for bringing forward this topic and this discussion. It is important that we all agree on the fact that apartheid is bad. That being said, we just have some questions just to more understand the position. They're just questions, and they're in good intent, and I look forward to hearing your response to that question, just so that we as executives, counselors, etc., are more aware of the question and situation. So my question is just that it would be really helpful if you could clarify a few things regarding the second part of the position, so the part that's focusing on divestment. Other positions in our position book, including the position on racism, sexism, LGBTQIA2+ issues, do not include precisely divestment or divestment actions. So my first part of the question is, what makes this position distinct from the others for it to require divestment? And the second part of the question, which I could ask later because I know it's kind of back to back, is how will CSU execs and counselors standardize and enforce this generally? Yes, and thank you again for bringing forward this position.
Thank you. Did you want a question directly from Hassan?
It could be from Hassan or whoever would be able to answer. I assume Hassan, since it is, I believe, his motion here. And then anybody else, if they want to add, we could discuss it, no problem.
Yeah, I'll allow a direct response, Hassan.
Yes. Harrison, what makes this question distinct from others is that apartheid is a distinction and a serious crime against humanity. It is not a general or figurative term or an umbrella term. Regularly, accusations of apartheid are serious and are done in consensus. If apartheid could simply fit in other crimes or injustices, then we would not have seen the entire South African apartheid movement come to action. Attempting to belittle the crime of apartheid by hiding it under another definition would just be another attempt at excusing apartheid. Lastly, divestment is a crucial component of the anti-apartheid movement as it manifested in South Africa. The largest advocates who did not want to see apartheid removed often leveraged the plight of oppressed South Africans' economic well-being to dismiss the idea of economic divestment. This was not successful, as we saw the majority of the university lead movements, both in unions and administrations, divest their funds from apartheid regimes. Imagine where we would be now if people back then succumbed to that logic.
Great. Thank you, Hassan.
Could I just ask a follow-up? Am I allowed to ask a follow-up?
Yeah. One follow-up, you're good.
Yeah, so I understand part A completely. Good answer. The second part of the question is just how will CSU execs and counselors standardize and enforce this generally? Could you give us a little bit of insight into that part of the question?
Hassan, do you have an answer?
Yeah, just give me a minute or less.
Take your time.
I can also put you on the speakers list if you'd like a couple minutes to think. Is
Yeah,
that
you
okay?
can go ahead and do that.
Yeah, sure, no problem. I'll put you after Lauren. Yeah, Faye, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, someone called on me?
Yes, sure.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so from my understanding, a lot of countries can be considered operating under apartheid, and according to a lot of international organizations, including like the ones that are mentioned, countries like, for instance, China and the US could also technically be considered countries operating under apartheid. So I was wondering, like, for instance, like the Uyghur concentration camps and also the residential schools in the US. So, and some may agree, some may disagree. So I was wondering, what are some concrete ways that the CSU exec and council can be equipped to decide what qualifies as apartheid, and also what it means to be involved in apartheid, so that it's in an equitable and just way?
Thank you. Were you looking for a direct response, Faye?
No.
All right, thank you.
Can I
Chris.
answer that?
Oh, sorry?
Can I answer that?
Who is answering?
Alina.
Sorry. Oh, Alina. Faye wasn't looking for a response, so I'll just keep you on the speakers list. It's only if somebody wants a response in the moment that I'll allow a direct response.
Thank you.
Chris, go ahead.
All right, awesome. Thank you. So my question is, so given the violence of residential schools and reservations and the history of genocide and the ongoing undermining of Indigenous sovereignty on unceded land by the government of Canada, some would argue that Canada is also an apartheid state. So my question is, if Canada is decided by council to be an apartheid state under this proposed position, how will divestment and withdrawal of financial support work at the CSU?
Thank you. Were you looking for a response, Chris?
Yeah.
Right. Hassan or anybody else would be able to provide a response?
I can answer that one.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah. I don't think, Chris, it is up to us, CSU counselors, to determine what is apartheid. I think it is better addressed by international standards and organizations that are able to determine the designation of such a crime. And I think that this motion aligns perfectly with our commitment to Indigenous sovereignty and the liberation of Indigenous peoples from the colonial occupation that takes place in Tiohtià:ke and across Turtle Island. And as counselors, we wholeheartedly support that the CSU's pursuit of implementing the calls to action named in the Truth and Reconciliation reports.
All right. Thank you, Butena. Lauren, go ahead.
Okay. Hello. So I would just like to start off by saying that, like, I think we're all against apartheid. So any opposition that you're hearing tonight, like, it's not against apartheid. It's more of, how is this position going to impact the CSU and how is it going to be implemented? So we have a pretty lengthy section within our positions book already going against systematic racism. And like, from my understanding, apartheid is like systematic racism. So how does this position differ from the position that we already have that kind of covers any form of systematic racism, which would include apartheid? And I kind of would like an answer to that. Like, I want to know, like, what does this specifically add that's not already covered within our positions book?
All right, thank you. Is there anyone who can provide a response to Lauren?
Yes, I can go ahead.
Yep, go ahead.
CSU executives are not the judges of apartheid. As you know, apartheid is a serious crime that is not to be taken lightly. Allegations of apartheid that are taken seriously are typically backed by human rights organizations, governments, and NGOs. A country is deemed apartheid and as an apartheid state typically when a consensus or a near consensus is reached. Of the countries that were brought forward, only a small few have been designated as such by these standards. We hope when this question passes, the executive members of the CSU will not resort to citing Wikipedia articles for the information when making this serious allegation of apartheid.
Can I respond to that? Like, I'm not a CSU executive, so this like what you just said doesn't actually answer my question at all. So
it was actually a response to your question.
Oh, okay. Sorry, that might have been my confusion, Hassan. Sorry. Lauren was looking for an answer specifically to her question. But yeah, I just remind folks to be respectful when speaking to one another and not make accusations. But did you want to respond to Lauren's question or pass along?
Can I answer Lauren's question?
Yeah, sure. I'll allow one more answer and then we'll go to the next person on the speakers list. Yeah, Ikram, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Lauren. It's a good question, right? I think the main point that I would like emphasize in your question is how taking on and moving with this motion would be different from the current state that the CSU is taking, the position that he's taking. I think what this motion is really trying to do is move positions into concrete actions, take on like those steps that allow us to make a change. So it's like saying, okay, the CSU is, okay, anti-racism, it's great. But how can we implement steps that actually reflect those positions that we're taking? So I think my understanding, if I read the motion, and I think that's what it's trying to do. Does it make sense?
Yeah, but like also the policy of our positions book states that positions are not meant to be mandates. So like the spirit of having like concrete steps within a position that's meant to be broad and encompassing is actually going against what positions actually are meant to be.
But there are a few
sorry, Ikram, I'm sorry to cut you off. It's just I want to cut the back and forth a little bit because we do have a speaker list. So thanks for your response and thanks for your interjection as well, Lauren. Hassan, did you still want to speak or you said everything before?
Yes, I can go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
If I refer to the position books where there are multiple positions that contains call to action, examples of policies that already involve calls to action are section 1.4.1, which includes a call to action about internships, which is called to remove all paid internships. This call to action has an economic impact on companies that would not otherwise be able to afford interns. And then section 1.5.2, it includes call to action for the University of Concordia to not use intrusive electronic surveillances. This section targets the corporations that produce these products. And in section 5.2, it's a call to action on anti-racism. This is called to go against structures and behaviors that uphold systematic racism, including businesses. Then section 7.2, climate justice. This new deal and targeting of fossil fuel companies to make sure they are not profitable. Then section 8.1.1, this section about food justice specifically targets the food providers, contracts, and actual businesses and recommends creating alternative food and systems that are student run. And then police brutality, which is divest and do not depend on SPVM, a financial body. The CSU stance on racism requires actively identifying and challenging racism, and actively challenging racism requires action. We do calls for actions and call to action against businesses. This is a regular practice when it comes to proactive policies done by the union.
Great, thank you, Hassan. Haya, welcome to the CSU meeting.
Hi, everyone. My name is Haya Bitar. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am just a regular guest, an attendee. I'm not a part of CSU officially, but I kind of just wanted to voice my opinion and to kind of reflect on the points that have been brought up in this discussion so far. And just to start off, I second what Hassan and Butena have said so far. I believe it was Harrison who brought up the question about what's the point of doing this motion and having this vote, and I think the simple answer is, which we've all kind of agreed to, that apartheid is terrible, and I think having to even just vote on it kind of shows the state that we're in. But going off the basis that apartheid is fundamentally egregious and completely against everything we stand for as Concordia students and as people participating in this motion, I think we have a very easy a very easy answer to this motion, which is yes, we have to be anti-apartheid. But I also think that, as Hassan has also pointed out, that the CSU has a very strong history of implementing standardized, when you take an emotion, the CSU has power to limit or to censor people or clubs that support racism in any shape or form as determined by the CSU. And going off of this, it's not our place to define what apartheid is, because Amnesty International and several other prominent human rights organizations have done so. So as for what I believe Laura pointed out, having apartheid specifically mentioned on the CSU handbook isn't different than anti-racism, but is different insofar as saying the word apartheid means that if the CSU adopts it, the CSU can say we will no longer fund or we will protest the hosting of apartheid apologists, clubs that support apartheid, people who have a shady history with apartheid, be it anywhere in the world. And I think someone brought up Uyghur concentration camps in China and America. And let me say this, and residential schools in Canada and America. We all agree, the CSU, and none of us would ever allow someone who supports residential schools on our campus, be it a professor, a speaker, or a club. So that's a very simple conclusion we all can come to. Why can't we apply that same logic to apartheid? Segregation in residential schools are very much a form of apartheid. We know that that's a fact. And we also know that we would never invite such people on our campus, and CSU has the power to do that. So let's just do the same for apartheid apologists. We're just expanding the definition. We're expanding that notion onto the handbook. I don't see why there is this kind of weird elephant in the room about, well, I'm against apartheid, but I have questions like why. It's actually quite simple. And we are all against apartheid. So let's just give the right and correct vote. That's it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Haya. Wawa, go ahead.
Hi. So in the line of moving the conversation forward into a question of implementation, if this passes, I have a question about the fact that Canada has citizens and migrants from countries that, well, as I said, could be considered apartheid countries. And some of them are small business owners that carry products from their home countries. Example, my own family. So my question would be, if we do decide to divest and withdraw financial support, how can we ensure that this doesn't negatively impact small business owners who might be minorities in their home countries or left their home countries because they disagree with apartheid policies? Thank you for your answer. I'd like to have a direct answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anybody who would like to respond to Wawa?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you for your question, Wawa. Of the countries you have not mentioned any, but of the many that we can think of, or the few that we can think of, only a small have been designated to respect that, not respect, but follow the standards of apartheid. And the businesses that you mentioned are going to be slightly impacted or not even impacted by Concordia's decision to stand against apartheid. And I wouldn't think that the spend of Concordia University's businesses would affect such small businesses in the Montreal community. So yeah, that's my answer.
Thank you, Butaina. Jeremiah, go ahead.
Hi, before I begin, I just want to say, Haya, that was well articulated, your argument. That was nice. My question for Hassan and whoever is involved in this motion, going into this meeting, my preconception of apartheid is a minority having systemic racism or institutionalized racism policy over a majority of people in the area, and that's what that's what they had experienced in South Africa. And to a lesser extent, when you could argue that there was some sort of institution, if that's the definition we're using, there was some sort of institutionalized discrimination in that form in Quebec many years ago from a minority of Anglophones with a majority of Francophones. But when we are talking about apartheid here, we're also talking about discrimination against a minority of Uyghurs in China and a minority of Aboriginal and Indigenous Canadians and Americans with the residential schools. So can you clarify for the record what you mean by apartheid here?
Yeah, Hassan, did you want to directly respond?
Yeah, Jeremiah, I can answer that. Basically, when we talk about apartheid over here, we're talking about the International Criminal Code Rome Statute coded by Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch. And then here it is: inhumane acts committed in the context of an institutionalized regime of systematic oppression and domination by one racial group over any other racial group or groups, and committed with the intention of maintaining that regime. That's the definition of apartheid, again defined by Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International, coded by International Criminal Court Rome Statute.
Okay, and so this includes majorities over minorities and not exclusively minorities over majorities, pretty much.
Yeah, but in order to prove it, you got to have a consensus.
Okay, yeah. I just want to clarify what the definition was, and thank you for giving that.
Yeah, and one more thing I just want to point out that when we talk about apartheid, we have to follow these international organizations, especially these leading human rights organizations, which I already mentioned, not our own what we think about it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And
all right, I'm just going to cut the back and forth. Yeah, thank you so much for your response, Hassan, and as well, Jeremiah, for the question. But I will move on with the speakers list. Alina, I had you on the speakers list, but do you still want to speak?
No, Butaina covered it. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, just FYI, I'm going by a written speakers list just because sometimes the hands jump up and down, and it's easier for me to keep track this way. So in that case, Butaina, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted, sorry if it was a long time ago that it was mentioned, going back to Lauren's question about the difference between systemic racism and apartheid. When we think of racism, it's not a conscious experience. It's not explicitly visible or readily visible. See, it's called systemic and structural in nature. And yes, it is. It can be seen in laws, but it's deeply embedded in the systems. And sometimes there are even unwritten practices that are racist. And you'll never see a world organization calling a country racist, but you will see a world organization calling a country out for committing the crimes of apartheid. So apartheid is recognizing that you are, as a country, putting forward laws that will segregate against a visible or non-visible minority sometimes. So this is where the distinction lies, and I hope that answers the question that you had earlier.
All right, thank you, Butaina. Harrison, go ahead.
Yes, thank you for all of the responses. So my next question is just because you guys describe basically what the crime of apartheid is in accordance with the Rome Statute, as well as human rights organizations such as Amnesty International. However, my question is, what countries, could you give us an example of some countries that you are referring to? That's the first part of my question. And because I'm aware that our policy of position doesn't allow you to state the names of countries in these types of positions. So I just want to know that first part of the question. And the second part of the question is, how will this impact our student clubs on campus, particularly for vocal support and I believe Hyatt mentioned that this would be applied to clubs on campuses, or the objective is to apply it to clubs on campuses. So as internal affairs coordinator, I'd like to know what that entails, please.
Is there anyone who can provide a response to Harrison?
Yeah, I can go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
To answer the last piece of your question, Harrison, it involves anything that's not supporting apartheid.
Right. Thank you. Was that all, sorry?
And no, and to answer your initial question about naming states, we're not here taking up a geopolitical position. We're taking a position against apartheid.
So I understand that. So my question is what would classify, again, as vocal support or financial support in relation to our CSU clubs? What would classify as withdrawing that? Or what would classify as a club supporting apartheid? Those are my, that's just, I thought I would rephrase my question. Yeah.
We have a $10 million fund that we need to divest from practices of apartheid, or from those who practice.
So
apartheid.
I agree with you there. I agree with you, but I'm just asking in regards to clubs specifically, because I believe that somebody mentioned that. So that's the question that I'm asking. It's specifically regards to our clubs and not investments.
Can I answer that?
I have you next on the, or sorry, I have you one after on the speakers list. I'll just allow Hassan if you want.
She can go ahead.
Okay. In that case, go ahead, Kate.
Okay. Well, just generally clubs are using fee levies from all undergraduate student. So in that sense, in that instance, the clubs are not supposed to support a crime against humanity. It's supposed to enrich student life. So if the money that the students are spending for every credit they're taking is going for any reason, like against enriching the student life of the student at large, every single student, then it shouldn't be funding. So anything that has to do with promoting hate speech or anything like that, then the funding will not be approved. Any clubs fees that are being used, I'm speaking from the perspective of being a VP internal in clubs in 2014, 2015, but every amount of money that is being used by a club is pre-approved by the VP club. So in that sense, it's not just like they have a lump sum and they do whatever with it and you're trying to catch on this funding and see how is it spent. Every single amount of money that is authorized to be spent is already for a specific event that enriches student life or brings people together. So in that sense, what we're doing, what I think is happening with this motion is that we're making sure that we're repeating the fact that it won't be used to promote hate. And basically when those amount of money are going to be distributed, we're being aware that, we have to be conscious of how the money is allocated and that it enriches student life. I hope that answers your question.
Great. Thank you very much, Kate. And I'll put you back on the speakers list, Harrison, for after. We will now hear from Siren. Am I saying that properly?
Hello?
Yes.
Hi. So I'm just a regular student again. And I just wanted to say, this is kind of going back to some of the points that were brought up earlier. I just find it a little troubling that there's this fixation on, small businesses and how they could theoretically maybe be impacted by this motion. Hypothetically, we're not naming any specific businesses, but we don't extend that same care and concern for the actual millions of people.
Point of order, you are not allowed to question someone's motivations.
Sorry, that's fair. Yeah, just please don't.
Okay, can I rephrase my question? Can I rephrase my comment in that case? May. Okay, so in my opinion, I just feel like, we should extend, our priority should be the actual reality of millions of people who are actually suffering under apartheid. I just think they should be centered in these conversations, as opposed to, always considering these external factors that are being used as justifications, that have the potential to be used as justifications for not hitting apartheid head on with no excuses. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say. And I also agree with what Kate said. As a student, I can speak for many students when I say that we really do care where our money is going and what it's being used for. That includes clubs. I don't see why there should be an exception for that. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say. I think we should focus on the reality of millions of people who are actually suffering under apartheid and prioritize them over small businesses. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We will now hear from the Center for Gender Advocacy.
Thank you. Yes, I think I would like to speak to 2 points that have kind of been echoing in this discussion. The first one is looking towards Canada as a potential apartheid state as well. I mean, for people who are familiar with the academia that demonstrates the resonance between South African apartheid and the Indigenous reservation school system, while this is just a concept, it's not unreasonable to assume that in the future, Canada will also be accused of committing apartheid. So with that, we also want to equip the CSU to have taken a proactive stance if these findings ever come out. In addition to that, I would encourage the CSU to take a look at the United Nations declarations on the rights of Indigenous people so that they can look to frameworks that are also echoed in other NGO findings for things to do next, like divesting from apartheid states. The second thing I'd like to talk about is the small business question. And I do want to believe that it's been brought forth in good faith. And I'd like to know what the economic impact of the CSU union can actually have on small migrant business to the degree of compromising livelihoods. If there's any findings from CSU counselors, I would love to see those. I'd be very interested in that. The CSU does have an investment, and something that's also echoed within the policies around these investments, again, to Kate's point, is to enhance student life, but also to be local and sustainable as well. So thank you for that.
All right, thank you. Lauren, go ahead.
Okay, so my role as a counselor here, my role is not to fight social causes. That's not my position within the union. My position is, okay, for policies that we're putting into place. I know, Bhutan, you're probably going to refute me on this, but what I'm concerned about is how are these positions, how are we going to carry out what you're asking us to do? So if this motion is passed, how us as a union, how are we going to fulfill our promise with this position? So who is going to make the decisions, even though we're not specifically naming states or businesses here, eventually at the end of the day, we're going to have to make a list to determine what activities or products or businesses to support and which ones we are not going to support. So who's going to be making those decisions? Are we going to have a committee, or how is that going to happen? Or who is going to, how are we as a union supposed to evaluate that? So as a position, I would love to add this to the positions book. I just think it should be done in a general, broad way so that we can more easily carry through with it instead of kind of having specific actions that should be more policies rather than a position.
Great, thank you. Were you looking for an answer?
I mean, no, I was not.
All right, thank you, Lauren.
I can answer Lauren if she wants an answer for everything she said.
I'll put you back on the speakers list in that case, because there was no answer required for that. And I don't want to deviate too far off track because we do have an extensive speakers list. Kate, go ahead.
Okay, well, I just want to voice my opinion on this because we stand as the CSU and as Students Against Discrimination. We stand for human rights. We already support the Black Lives Matter movement. We support the LGBTQ plus rights. And logically, we stand against apartheid, so which is a racial segregation by definition. So I think our world needs a lot of love and our world needs a lot of progress to reach global peace. But a lot of the points that are being addressed are about, what about this topic? What about that topic? What about all these other people that are experiencing discrimination? And that's all very valid points that should be addressed. And it's just that in this instance, this motion doesn't discuss that. So this motion is to stand against systemic oppression because it is a crime against humanity that has the sole intention of dominate. So, of course, we want to take further position, but for this discussion, we have to discuss this motion. So I think it's good, however, that, everybody speaks their opinion and raise their concerns. But I think the goal is to stay on this motion and not on other conflict that has nothing to do with this. That's just my opinion. So I personally support the motion.
All right, thank you, Kate. And just on the topic of remaining on topic, the motion is to send the position to referendum. It's not to adopt the position currently. So, you can be against the motion or against the position and just want the students to vote for it, or you can be for the motion and not want the students to vote for it. So just a reminder that it is to send it to referendum, not to adopt it right here, right now. Harrison, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Caitlin, and thank you, everybody. As the current Internal Affairs Coordinator, which is responsible for over 90 registered clubs, I would like to know, just from the perpetrators, from the counselors and the people that are here on our CSU council, and Nabil, the perpetrator of this motion, whether this means that those clubs are not to receive funding. And that is the question that I have. We can talk also about whether it's specific events. That could be an answer that's provided. It could be that those clubs are just defunded outright. And that's the question that I have. So I'm hoping that somebody can provide a clear answer on that. Thank you so much.
Right. Were you looking for a response?
Yes.
Right.
Can I answer that? It's Alina speaking.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, Alina, go ahead.
Thank you. So I haven't been part of creating this motion, but I do want to say that, and I believe someone else said this before, student clubs and activities, events are supposed to be there to sort of enrich student life. I think we can all agree that supporting apartheid would not enrich anybody's life. So if there was a situation in which a club is supporting an apartheid state or a figure of apartheid, I think it would be fair to say that Concordia should divest from that, seeing as how it would not enrich students' lives.
So thank you for clarifying that, Alina. Could I just have a point of clarification?
Yeah, go ahead.
So does that mean that cultural and ethnic clubs that are religious, cultural, ethnic, all of the above, that although do not represent their governments, do not represent the places that they are from, and even if there's individuals in there that do not agree with the apartheid, with their apartheid regime that their government is portraying, does that mean that those individuals will have to suffer the consequences from having their club defunded? That's the question that I have.
If the club is directly economically enriching any figure that is supporting apartheid, then yes, the funding should be revoked.
So what does that mean by a figure? Could you clarify that?
If the club is just purely a culture club, as you suggested, perhaps the event is just like, a social event, people are getting together, a cultural setting, then no, that should not be affected because that is not directly supporting apartheid. I hope that answers your question.
That does. So we're referring to specific events or specific actions on behalf of the club.
Actions and financial actions, yes.
And,
okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to cut the back and forth. Thank you very much for your responses, Alina. I'm just going to go to a couple of first-time speakers just because the list is quite extensive, and then move back to second. Ikram and Hannah, we have not heard from you yet. So Ikram, go ahead.
Yeah, so it was actually to touch upon this point that Harrison brought up, which is interesting because it's an important question to know, right? So I would just maybe like to emphasize one point concerning ethnic clubs. I think if this motion passes, which I believe in, I have faith in the student body, and it's as we all said, we're all against apartheid. If this motion passes, I think it's important for clubs to make a statement against apartheid state. I think it's important to make that distinction because, and we have this discussion as well in other settings where we were speaking about how to help bridge our community and how to make us all feel less tense about some geopolitical issues that are happening, but they're affecting us. Despite the distance. So I think it would be important to make that statement. And after that, if you make that statement, you're openly against apartheid states, then there's no reason for any club to be divested in. And if you do, then I think divestment is like the least we can do. It's just that's what we can do. But it's just, it would be horrible for some clubs to be for that. I hope this complements the answer. Evelina.
Yeah, thank you. So just clarifying,
Wait, Harrison, I'm just going to cut you off because you're on the speakers list and we've already done a bit of back and forth there. So I'll put you back on and we will hear from Hannah.
Yeah, I just wanted to also kind of respond to what Lauren was saying earlier and what Lauren was like questioning about how this will be carried out. I think that it's also important for us to recognize that we should not be applying different standards to referendum questions. This is a question that the motion itself, as was stated, would be to send it to referendum and to have students decide on this. And I think in the past, whenever we've had, I'm just thinking about, we had a bunch of referendum questions in the fall by-elections, some of which included calls to action. And I don't think any of them were questioned to this extent about how we would actually go about implementing them. I think that obviously what exactly can happen afterwards are important questions, but I think that for now we should let the students vote on it. Because I think otherwise we are creating a double standard. Like, why are we questioning the implications of this, but not of other motions in the same way? So I think that this is something that students need to be able to vote on at a referendum. And then after that, it will be up to CSU, to council, to decide exactly which actions to take from that.
Great. Thank you, Hannah. Caleb, go ahead as first-time speaker.
Thank you. On the point of clubs and ethnic clubs particularly, the CSU and Concordia University has strong anti-discrimination policies on the basis of many, many things. And discriminating against an ethnic club would be in violation of those. And so we can see that those policies, if will be applied to prevent any kind of discrimination that's based on this motion. So there shouldn't be a problem with that, because those policies will prevent against that. In terms of mechanics of this, there is a Silk Fund committee that deals with the CSU's investments. And a simple thing that we could do is suggest or mandate them to use the UN principles of responsible investment, which includes a position against apartheid. There are already documents set up by organizations with much, much more knowledge and expertise on this subject, and we can mandate the Silk Fund to follow those documents set up by organizations like the UN that, again, are against apartheid. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Caleb. Hadassah from the Concordian.
Hello, everyone. I'm editor-in-chief at the Concordian. I just have a quick question. I know that Hannah just said that students will vote for this motion, and then afterwards it'll be up to the CSU council to decide how to implement it, specifically what states would be implemented. But I guess I want to ask, people behind the motion, if there are states already in mind to divest or withdraw any vocal support from, if it'll if you have like a list available of who you're already thinking about.
All right, thank you for the question. Is there anyone who wants to provide a response?
I can respond to that.
Yeah, go ahead, Hassan.
The list is basically following the international community's guidelines.
All right, thank you, Hassan. All right, so did you have a follow-up, Hadassah?
Yeah, I guess if you can name like one country at least that you were thinking about.
Is there anyone who wants to provide a response?
I can go for it again, Caitlin.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hadassah, the CSU doesn't take geopolitical positions, so I cannot provide a name of a country.
All right, thank you, Hassan. So with that, we can move on to, everyone has spoken at least once. So we'll move on to Lauren.
Yeah, since this is going to referendum, this is like something about the wording of the motion, but can we actually have the definition that Hassan said earlier tonight, like actually written so students can like refer to that like definition as they're reading the motion instead of going and researching and looking up like within the organization's website what that definition is?
Are you moving to amend the motion officially or just asking if it can be done?
I'm just wondering, like, can it be considered a friendly amendment to have that definition included into the wording? So people know like exactly what definition we're referring to.
Does the amendment, so you want an amendment, right?
I'm asking if that is like open with positive reception first.
Can I just comment?
Yeah, so that's what happens sometimes when if you ask the room a question, then we end up on a whole other topic. So I'd suggest either amending the motion or just moving along.
Okay, then I motion to amend the motion to add the definition instead of like having it say like such as defined by those two the human rights organizations, just instead of having it cite it or like just have the actual definition written in there for people to read.
All right. Do we have a second for the motion?
I'll second it.
Second by Jeremiah. Do you want to motivate, Lauren?
Sure. I just think like if students are voting on this, that we should make it as easy for them to kind of make their decision as possible. And having that definition in there would just be a great way to help people clearly understand and vote correctly on what they're supporting.
All right. Thank you. Just to clarify your amendment, do you want, like, because it's online voting, do you want it to link to that or do you want it to actually show up in the motion just for logistics?
I was thinking directly in the motion because I really don't think people are going to click on it. And I didn't think the definition that Hassan said earlier was that long. So.
All right. Thank you. Okay, so first of all, is there anybody who is in opposition to adding the definition to the motion?
I'm in a position, but partly I think it's a great idea to offer that information to students. But considering we're all university students, undergrads, I think we're maybe not all aware of what apartheid means, but we're all capable of looking up the definition provided by the three international organizations that are mentioned. And I wouldn't believe that one of them, so for instance, the UN Human Rights Council would provide two contradicting definitions of apartheid. To a greater extent, they would just complement each other. But I think undergraduate students are capable enough of looking the definition up themselves.
All right, thank you.
So
okay,
I'm not against it. So it's a link is a great idea, but to put the definition would make the the question way too long, in my personal opinion.
There's
right.
been longer ones.
So since there is opposition to the amendment, I'll open a speakers list on just the amendment. Hadassah and Ikram, was it on the main motion or the amendment that you wanted to speak?
Main motion.
Main motion. Okay, so in that case, you're both on the.
It was the amendment.
It was or it wasn't?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it was it wasn't for Hadassah, and it is for me.
Oh, it is. Okay, so in that case, Hadassah, I will keep you on the main speakers list, and Ikram, go ahead.
Yeah. So I think it's a great point to add the definitions, the motion. But again, as Butena said, I agree that it would make it too long. And there's also the point that just to make it transparent and to be accurate, we need to put the definitions of all the references that are put. So there's, I think, 3. If I don't have it in front of me, I think it's up in the chat. But we have 3 definitions that are pretty much alike, but for accuracy, we need to put all of them. So it would make the motion longer, and maybe it could discourage some of just like reading it and voting. So so from that account, like of course it's just my opinion, but I think it would be maybe better to leave it short and then put a link to all 3.
Yeah, is there a possibility?
Thank you, Ikram. Oh, sorry, I'll put you on the speakers list if you want to speak. Jeremiah, Kate, go ahead.
I don't really see the need of defining. I think what she's saying, she wants to define the word apartheid. I'm not exactly sure because she's like talking about definition, but it's not very clear what she wants to amend.
The amendment was to add the definition by Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International, like the actual wordings by the organization.
The wording. Okay, so I would suggest to have a link because it would be too long. And I think if students, I mean, we all have phones, we can look for ourselves if we're voting on something. But if it's too long, people might lose interest. So I would suggest not to amend the motion, but I would motion to add a link if she thinks it's necessary. I'm totally flexible.
Okay, thank you, Kate. Jeremiah, go ahead.
I'll raise 2 points. Number one, is it possible for there to be just a summary of the definition, like in 2 sentences that pretty much communicates the exact same message? And the second question I have is, if, like, considering whether the answer for number 1 is yes or no, do you think it would be more appropriate if we collectively voted on whether, presuming the motion even passes, would it be considered to vote on whether we agree that the link would be better or whether a definition would be better?
Well, just to answer that, I specifically clarified with Lauren, who made the amendment, about the link, and the answer was no. So right now the motion on the table is, or the amendment on the table is all the wording or nothing. So it's up to council to vote for either all the wording or no, not all the wording, not anywhere in between.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I said okay, yeah.
All right, thank you. Hassan, go ahead.
No, I was just also going to agree with what the other speaker said, that I'm opposed to the amendment, but again, I'm open to presenting links because like mentioned before, if we include the full definition, the question will be really long and then it will discourage a lot of voters to like not go through it.
All right, thank you. Haya, go ahead.
Hi, sorry, I was just trying to find my mute button. It's more of a general question, nothing to do with this specific amendment. So do you want to keep me for later or?
Oh yeah, this is just on the amendment, so I can put you back on the speakers list.
I can be one of the last speakers. I don't mind.
Arya, go ahead.
I think I personally agree with Lauren that I think we should have the definition there because a student that's voting, like we said, they tend to do the bare minimum when they're doing like their voting, right? And for them to have everything on one page to know exactly what they're voting for is very important. And we don't want them to be like, oh, well, I don't really know what it means, but oh, there's a link. Let me it doesn't matter. Let me just vote. We want the students that are voting to know what they're voting for. So I think even if it makes it a little longer, it's better that our students are like understand the question and understand fully what they're voting for.
All right, thank you, Arya. Harrison, go ahead.
Arya basically said what I wanted to say.
All right, thank you. Michelle, go ahead.
Just for the minutes, Don, can you post your definition in the chat, please?
Yeah, that would be great, actually, Hassan, because if it does pass, I need to know what to send to the CEO. So that would be great if either Lauren as the amender or Hassan, since you were the citer of the two, if somebody could could post them in the chat for wording, that would be great. Nathaniel, go ahead. Nathaniel? Maybe having audio issues. I can put you back on the speakers list. Nathaniel.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was trying to get my headphones to work. I just got out of class. I had a question about, I think it was Hassan who said, because someone asked for which countries would be subjected to this, and he said the CSU cannot take geopolitical stance. So my question is, how are we supposed to implement this if we can't take geopolitical stance? Like, I'm 100% against it, but I just want to understand like the logic behind it.
We're actually on an amendment right now that's specific.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
To the question, but I can put you back on the speakers list for the main question, though. That's not a problem. And then we will deal with that question after.
Perfect.
Lauren, go ahead.
Yeah, so I hear what you all are saying, and in my personal opinion, when it comes to voting, I don't think people are going to click on a link. So to compromise, what I suggest is instead of having like the actual wording within the motion that makes like the actual motion longer, could we like have an asterisk next to like the word apartheid or like parentheses that says like can view the definition below, and have the definitions written below the motion that can be read?
Was that not the initial purpose of the motion? Was just to have them at the end?
I didn't really care where they were written within the motion. I just wanted it on the motion. But if like the concern is the definitions written within the motion, then I don't mind having it written at the end.
I think if you have like the question in the, let's say the first part, and then like that definition is a separate paragraph, but it's still in the motion, like it's still there, but like it's in a separate paragraph. People who are going to vote, some will choose to read it, some won't, but I don't think they're going to stop reading the entire thing just because of one paragraph. You know, I think they would still vote on it anyway, but some will read it, some won't. That's just how I see it.
All right. So the way that I had interpreted it is just to have them at the end. Is that how everybody else interpreted the?
I don't think so. No.
Okay.
I think what was, if I can just quickly, what was asked at the beginning, or proposed, I should say, is to have beginning of the motion as soon as apartheid is mentioned, have the definition, and just to put everything in perspective, just the UN Human Rights Watch definition is 500 words long, so it would be this chunk of words and then continuing the motion. So that's why I was kind of refraining from supporting that amendment.
Can it be shortened, or?
So maybe we're actually more in agreement than we think we are. Is there opposition to having the, because I mean, Lauren, you said that you didn't care where it meant. Is there any opposition to having it show up at the end of the motion?
No, but I just a quick point before moving on to the voting, just to make sure I'm understanding what the motion is. Is it okay to have the motion and then below have the wording, the definition with the referencing of one? Like we will have to choose one. Well, probably the one by the Human Rights Watch. And is it okay if we put that on and then we put the whole definition? We can because I think a summary. I would not mind a summary. There's the one that Hassan just stated during the discussion, which is a summary of the idea. But it depends on how the council would feel about that, because it's not a complete definition of apartheid, and it's the basis of this motion. So if you're okay with that, then I would agree with the summary that he mentioned. I can send it to the chat. So yeah, let me know. Lauren,
can you post both? Like, can you post the summary as well as like the actual link to this definition we're going to have in there?
Okay.
Yes.
Why wouldn't we? Would you be okay with having the summary, because so that we're sure that students know what they're voting for, and then a link for people who want to go that extra mile and read the full definition? Would that be something that you would find more aligned with your motion, your amendment?
I can't really like agree nor disagree until like I've actually read this whole 500 words that we're referring to, because I mean the summary is like someone's own personal summary. It's not.
Well, it's not.
So the problem with this is that when this meeting ends, I have to send wording to the CEO, and I need to know exactly what that wording is. So
sorry, can I just interject that Hassan has already cited the 2002 Rome Statute at the ICC, and that is an easy enough definition of about 4 sentences that I think is adequate for you all.
Does that satisfy?
Well, for the summary, well, just to go back to Lauren, I sent the summary in the chat. I think for the other one, I think I can find it for you on the website, but just for the sake of the amendment that you're proposing, you can read the summary in the chat if you want, because I know that Hassan mentioned it, but it might have just been said maybe too quickly, and maybe just so if you want it, it's in the chat. I don't know if that would.
I'm trying to read it right now. Caitlin, I think like for everyone, can you just pull up a Google Doc and just put all this, like what we're saying, just in the doc so that everyone can kind of see what this motion is going to look like, so that we can all be in an agreement of like what students are going to be seeing when they vote?
Yeah, I'm just trying to find, sorry, because there was a lot of text going by in the chat. I'm just trying to find what folks have said. Somebody posted a link.
Yeah, there's a link to the whole 500 words.
Sorry?
There's a link for the whole 500 words.
Yeah, and then there's a summary later. Yeah. So that one is shorter. And there's what, so a lot of people posted a lot of different things. So I'm trying to go through them to see.
I think Ikram posted the summary and Theodore posted the actual link.
Oh, okay.
500 words. No, it says that one is not 500 word. I don't know if they were talking about the one that was posted before. I'm trying to copy paste it in the chat, but it's not working. So I don't know. I have a Google Doc already made, so I don't know how.
You can share it if you want, if you already got it pulled up.
Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah, because like I said, we need some wording to send to the CEO and also for folks to vote on as well, so that we're not just kind of voting on something that we don't have the wording for. So yeah, if you could share the Google Doc, yeah, because for some reason the chat won't let me scroll up, so that's not super helpful. But yeah, I see the last thing that was posted regarding the Rome Statute. Is that the definition that folks want to go with? Like, is that what was meant by this?
I think Bettina sent a Google Doc.
Oh, okay. So this is the definition. Is this what you meant, Lauren?
Is this the definition that like they...
It is one of the definitions.
Is this the main one you guys wanted to go with?
because we weren't planning originally to include the definition, we're just planning to mention the organizations. We haven't come up with an agreement on which one to use because they all complement each other in some way. So I can't answer for everyone on this, but this is the UN's Human Rights Watch definition.
All right. So if this is the Human Rights Watch's definition, then it's the one that fits in with the motion. And from my understanding, folks are okay with having it be included at the end of the motion.
Yeah, I think, Caitlin, the paragraph that might be best, because I think this is just a little too long for people to actually read all of this, and it will look way too long on the voting thing. But this paragraph here seems to cover it pretty accurately.
All right. Because your initial amendment was to include the definitions, but
then for my official amendment, amending my amendment or whatever, the paragraph I sent is in the chat is what I think should be included below the motion with a link to the full 500 words afterwards.
All right. So do we have a second for that amendment?
Can I ask a question before?
Yes, after. Do we have a second for that?
Oh, sorry.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Hirsch. Did you want to motivate, Lauren?
Has was this taken directly from the website or
Yes.
My question was, can you send a link to that definition, please, that you put in the chat?
I took it directly from your Google Doc.
Excellent. Thank you.
So, but can I have it directly from the website instead of the Google Doc? Because there's this dot thing that usually means something's missing there.
You mean on the Google Doc that I just sent?
Yeah. There's this inhumane acts ... committed in the context of an institutionalized regime.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to move on with the speakers list just because, Lauren, it seems that you amended this to include the definition and now you don't like the definition because it's too long. So I'm trying to figure out exactly what you want with the amendment.
I would like this paragraph plus the link.
Okay, I understand.
I sent you the link, and it is below definitions of apartheid and persecution. This is where you'll find.
Okay.
All right. Is there a second to include that in the motion?
Hirsch already seconded.
Sorry. Thanks, Hirsch. Lauren, did you want to motivate for your amendment to the amendment?
I just think it's a good balance between informing students so that they have the least resistance possible in terms of information barriers while voting, while also informing them. So I guess it's a best of both worlds. We have part of the definition straight from the website and also a link. They want to read the full definition on the website.
All right. Thank you, Lauren. Hassan, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, as you can see, we're really getting lost over here in the semantics. I'm so open for the idea of just posting the link rather than the definition and the link itself again, because that's making it too long. And I trust that our student body would definitely go through with the link option because, like I said, if it's going to make it too long, then that's going to take away the motivation for most people to read the entire thing.
I just shortened it to a pretty concise paragraph.
Yeah, right now there's the paragraph and the link that's that we are looking at for the amendment. Faye, go ahead.
Oh, I was just wondering, what was the missing sentence that was in the Google Doc?
It's not a missing sentence. It's literally how it's written on the website.
Oh,
Yeah,
the dot part?
Yeah, exactly.
I went on the website and it's on the website there.
Oh, that's weird. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying. Ikram, go ahead.
So because I think to go back to the original amendment, I think the purpose. Well, I don't know, Lauren, you can confirm or disconfirm. I think the purpose of this amendment was to inform students, right, and make it easier for them to understand the purpose of the motion, and especially the word apartheid, because maybe not everyone is familiar with it. I honestly think, and I'm talking as me, I would not be able to read that whole paragraph. I would not. It would discourage me. If I did not understand apartheid, that would discourage me from understanding what apartheid is. So I was wondering if it would be possible to, I don't know if, Butena, I don't know if you could add the summary to the Google Doc. But if it's possible so that everyone can see it, it's a summary that really kind of summarized the purpose of this whole definition, and then a link to it so that we can have a bit of your point, which I think is important, because it's important for those that do not know apartheid to know and have the ability to vote, because otherwise they could just dismiss the motion, but also make it accessible to them and not discourage them with a whole paragraph, which doesn't even englobes the whole definition, right? It's just a random chunk. Right. So unless you have a specific motivation for that specific paragraph, but that would be my idea to kind of keep the essence of this amendment. Because I agree with you. I think it's needed.
Unfortunately, we can't change the amendment's already been amended, so we can't keep going down this rabbit hole. We're going to have to vote on it at some point. So we can't just keep changing it before the vote. We're going to vote on the sorry?
Can I respond?
Was it a question? Did you want a response, Ikram?
She's asking why I chose that specific paragraph.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Lauren.
I mean, I picked that paragraph because it says the definition, like apartheid defined as such and such. So that's why I picked it. As for my amendment, I'm not really changing my amendment because my amendment includes the source that you guys have been citing in your original motion. And if people want to read more, they can read more, but there's still a paragraph that at least explains part of it.
I think the key word you said is part of it. The same paragraph below still defines apartheid, and the one above also touches upon it. So this whole is normal, right? Because this is the definition. It's 500 words, and they didn't take any one of them because that's the definition of the Human Rights Watch institution organization, right? So that was more my point. It definitely defines, but it's not a complete definition. So if we're taking chunks off, maybe it would at least give it an advantage to make it accessible to the general audience, something that they can read, and then they can decide to read more on through a link. But unfortunately, there were already 2 amendments, so I guess we'll just have to vote on it.
I'm not okay.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna have to move on with the speakers list. Haya, go ahead.
I was just going to say I've noticed a considerable drop in the attendees because I feel like this has been, like you said, we're just going down a rabbit hole of what do we choose and what do we say. I think someone said in the chat it's pedantic, and I agree. So as a guest, I would just strongly urge the council people to just move on and to the actual, because I feel like we're losing sight of why we're here, which is to vote either for or against apartheid. So if we can just, vote on this and move on, that would be greatly appreciated.
Right, thank you. Caleb, go ahead.
Just confirming this can't be changed anymore?
No, it cannot.
In that case, I'd like to call the question.
All right, do we have a second for calling the question?
Second.
Second by Lauren. Calling the question means that we will cease discussion and take a vote. So is there any opposition to calling the question on the amendment? All right, no opposition for calling the question, so we will move to a vote. So currently the amendment on the table is the paragraph that was in the chat and the link included. So those are the proposed amendments with the paragraph at the end with the link to the longer definition. So is there any opposition to including this in the motion? Opposition, yell it out if you have any.
I have an opposition to include this.
So in that case, we will move to a vote since it's not unanimous. So if you are for, I will go by roll call. If you are for, say for. If you are against adding it, say against. And if you are abstaining, then you may say abstain. And I will go down the list of councillors. Samuel, how do you vote? Might not be here. Wawa, how do you vote?
I'm for adding the definition.
All right, for, thank you. Lauren?
Yes.
All right. Oh yeah, sorry. Yes, no, or abstain is also acceptable. Jeremiah, how do you vote?
I'm for the amendment.
All right, thank you. Howard, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Noah, I don't believe is here. No. Hirsch, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. Edel, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. Shania, how do you vote? Shania is not here. Butaina, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. Alina, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. Chris, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Yes. Ikram, how do you vote?
Sorry, yes.
Yes. All right. Thank you. Lily, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. Calvin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. Nathaniel?
Yes.
Yes. Olivia's not here. Caleb?
Yes.
Yes. Marissa, how do you vote?
Sorry, yes.
Yes. All right. Kate, how do you vote? Sorry, was that no?
That was no.
No. All right. Thank you. And Hassan?
Abstain.
Abstain. Thank you. All right. So we have 15 yes, 1 no, and 1 abstention. So the amendment carries, and we will move on back to the main motion. And I will continue with the speakers list there. That begins with Butaina.
It's fine. I have nothing to say.
All right, thank you. Ikram.
Yeah, it was more of a question. Can we ensure in the motion the way it's framed, just the shape of it? Can it be? Can there be a space between the motion and the definition? And can the definition be just like clearly defined as a definition so that it's very clear and that people can just focus on the motion if they're already familiar with apartheid?
Yeah, that was the plan. Okay. Unless the plan was to make it clear that this was a definition and this was the motion, or this was the position, unless I misunderstood. I don't think so, though. Okay, yes, don't worry. It will be clarified with the CEO, the formatting of the motion and the definition. So don't worry about that. Was that all?
Yes.
All right, awesome. Hassan, go ahead.
Yeah, I just also wanted to make sure in the definition we will be including Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International at the top.
Now, oh, yes. At the top, like to differentiate which one is which, you mean?
No, like as the question was originally stated, it also included Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International. So it will be like that still.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yes, that did not change.
Perfect. Thank you.
Not a problem. Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So given that those who brought forward this motion have stated that the CSU would have to financially boycott certain club events and clubs will not be able to receive funding for their events, who decides what clubs are upholding apartheid? And I just want to know directly, of course, who decides how to sanction clubs? Because that still hasn't been cleared, and I would like a direct answer for that, please.
Yeah, is there anyone who can provide a response to Chris?
Can I just?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. I think it was touched upon with Harrison earlier, but it would be any club that supports an apartheid state, obviously, and hopefully the way this would be done for groups that are kind of on, let's say, because I believe you're referring to groups that are on the gray zones, or that we cannot ensure whether or not they're supporting apartheid. I don't know if that's what was your intention. But if it is the case, then we can definitely continue on to make sure that no one no one falls under this motion for no reasons. We can just follow it with the rule of all clubs should state that their opposition. Sorry, their opposition to apartheid states. Does that make sense?
Does that answer your question, Chris?
Okay. Again, so I just want to know, like, who will be the one specifically enforcing these rules on clubs? Do you want the clubs to do it themselves? Would it be a committee, committee?
Answer that?
Yeah, because obviously someone has to follow a guideline with this, right? So I just want to know who's going to be the one enforcing it.
Yeah, sure. Kate, did you want to go?
Yeah, well, if possible, who assigns the money is the Clubs in Space Committee, which is chaired by the VP Club. So in that instance, any funding that's going to go for a club for any event is going to have to go through this committee. And it's comprised of some counselors, of an exec, and I think also one student at large, but I'm not sure, or one independent student, I'm not sure. But it's basically people of this council who will vote and who will receive a project proposal from the club itself, which a motivation of why they need to do an event and how much funding they need. And then they will go into a vote to reach a consensus of how much money will be allocated out of the funding. So if the event itself is promoting hate, then the counselors, us, have the responsibility not to support that.
Great. Thank you, Kate. Haya, go ahead.
Yes, so I just wanted to say that, again, as a student and not as like an official member of the CSU, I want to remind everyone that we have already gone over these points about who's going to be affected business-wise and who's going to be in the clubs, like who's going to be hurt by this decision, et cetera, et cetera. And we've already addressed it several times. Kate and a number of other people have provided answers to this. So I would wish that, we move on and we hopefully get to the vote, because I've been to a lot of, similar discussions about what motions to adopt, to be anti-racist, etc. And I've never seen this much debate about what specific ethnic, religious club and money-wise, how it's going to go. Like, these are mechanics, I assume, as a Concordia student, my CSU
point of information, if possible, can I provide a point of information as the internal affairs coordinator?
No, point of information is only for questions, but I can put you on the speakers list. Continue, Haya.
Yes, so I've never seen this much I guess questioning over the motives behind this. I think it's very simple. Any club that we know that takes money or is associated with an apartheid regime or government, we can just have a discussion about it and find the appropriate measures to take to divest, etc. I, again, put that responsibility on the CSU, and they can do this behind doors, whatever. I don't think the purpose of this discussion is that. The purpose of discussion is quite simple. Are you or are you against apartheid? And the mechanics of it, if we replace the word apartheid with Black Lives Matter or anti-Blackness, you would not be arguing, well, which type of club exactly is going to be divested from or is going to be impacted if we were to really take seriously anti-Blackness. So I see a kind of double standard with apartheid. So I really hope we move on to the vote and stop going in circles, because I really think we're losing a lot of focus and participation from students at Concordia who are attending the Zoom.
Great, thank you, Haya. Let's just try not to compare different instances of discrimination, please. Hadassah, go ahead.
Yeah, I have, I'm not sure if I can ask like 3 questions, but I have at least 2. My first one was Nathaniel ended up asking it. So Hassan had said that the CSU can't take a geopolitical position. I'm a little bit confused, because if the CSU can't take a geopolitical position, on any country, then how will this be enforced?
Did you want to respond to that, Hassan?
Yes, I think it's simple that the position spoke isn't singling out a country, but rather a crime. Calls to action can single out anyone committing a crime, including states. Thus, it is not a geopolitical position.
I'd like to call the question, Caitlin.
You can do that on your speaker turn, but I appreciate the sentiment. What was your next question, Hadassah?
Yeah, I guess I know that there has been a lot of talk about the mechanics and to stop the conversation, just go to the vote. But I do find it like a little bit difficult as someone from the outside. It's been a while since I've been to the CSU, like how it'll be enforced. So like, for example, the most recent one that I see from Amnesty International was that they defined Israel as an apartheid state. So let's say that any organization, supporting Israel, now it was defined as a support for an apartheid state. So like, I guess, what would that look like? Would that be like anyone with a business doing like a link to Israel? Would it be like an event about going to Israel? I'm just confused about how it'll be enforced and what it might look like in real life.
Does anyone want to respond to that?
Okay. Butania, yeah, okay. It's Hadassah, I think it's a great point. And coming myself, just my personal experience and from my country, I realize that there's a difference to be made between the people of a country and the government itself. So I guess how would you? Is it okay if I can ask you a question?
A quick one.
Yeah, really quick. Would you feel comfortable if the guidelines were clearer, and that as long as you state that you're against the apartheid state or the apartheid actions made by so in your case by Israel, then that's good. As long as you make that stance and then publicly just like make it official. And then if you have the rest should not be influenced. Would that be okay for you?
I see. So it would be like, so if the club said, like I'm against the apartheid actions of such and such, that would be like enough. And then they could continue doing kind of almost business as usual. Cause I'm just.
Yeah, because I do understand that there's a difference between a government and their people. So for example, if I'm Moroccan, if Morocco has been doing some things that I'm not proud of, then I wouldn't want this to be labeled on me. It's not fair. If I disagree with those, then I should have the right to openly disagree with it, just so that the misconception is cleared, and then still revindicate my Moroccan nationality. Does that make sense?
I understand. Yeah. So then if they do, so if there was a Moroccan club and then they did business with Morocco, for example, like any sort of link, or then the government, was, I don't know, let's say that there was like an academic coming from Moroccan university, like that would not.
Just because there's a positions within the positions book that says the CSU can't take a geopolitical stance doesn't mean that this motion can't follow the findings of top human rights organizations.
All right, folks. I think folks are getting a little bit away from the question right now, so I'm going to move on with the speakers list.
Thank you.
We do have quite an extensive speakers list. I appreciate the questions. And just to remind folks, if you're not happy with the answer that's given, that doesn't mean that an answer was not given. Or on the other hand, if an answer was not given and you keep asking the same question, you just have to be unsatisfied with the response. That's just how it is. So I'm going to move on with Arya. Go ahead.
Yeah, so it's more of like a technical question, but you guys keep going back and forth against, so the club is going to have to be defunded and then the event is going to be defunded. Could you please clarify, like, will this be that a club will have to bring an event every time to the committee and then the committee will decide, or is it just once at the beginning of the year like it is right now? So that's the only thing I want clarification over.
All right, is there anyone who can respond to Arya's question?
I could answer.
Yeah, go ahead.
Generally, budget proposals are sent at the beginning of the school year. So the students will have will have an idea of what events they will carry out throughout the year. They will have an idea of how much money they need to make all their events happen. And the money is allocated based on the membership of, like, how many members. If you're a club of 50 members or a club of 300 members, you don't have the same outreach. So the money is allocated in this consideration. And then what kind of events is taking place. So if it's something that doesn't make sense, like we want a lobster dinner for just our execs, that won't be approved. But if you have an event that is, let's say, a networking event for people that are like-minded of your any ethnic group, then sure. So it depends. Like, everything needs to be specifically described as you get the proposal, as you submit, but you're also allowed to have additional events throughout the year. Let's say that you have an event that you did not plan at the beginning of the year and you want some specific funding, you're allowed to ask the VP internal, which goes through the committee. So any event are documented and has an actual proposal and needs to go through a democratic approach to be approved and is approved by council by majority. And the money is then documented, and this information is usually available at the end of the year in the report of how the money was allocated for us students for complete transparency of where our money is going. So I think it's like the conversation of clubs is pretty much done at this point. Any clubs, any event will have a discussion. That does an event will have to go through a committee. And I mean,
can I provide a point of information quickly on that comment?
Harrison, you're next on the speakers list, but thank you for the response.
Give it to Arya and for his.
Yeah, can I have a direct response, please?
Yeah. Go ahead, Arya.
So, Kate, thanks for explaining like the budget. I'm actually the finance coordinator of the CSU, so I know how budgets work. The only thing I wanted to know is, does it stay the same way? Like you said, so if they present it at the beginning of the year and it gets approved at the committee, that's it, right? They don't need to come after that every single event to present, correct?
What do you mean?
So once they send it, you just explained it. Once they send their budget at the beginning of the year and it gets approved by the committee, they're allowed to go through and do all these events that they had planned in their budget. But it will not have to be every single event that comes and gets presented throughout the year. Is that correct?
It's correct that they can only carry on the events that were pre-approved by the committee.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Arya. Harrison, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, I am the current internal affairs coordinator, so I do chair those clubs and space committee meetings that Kate was referring to prior. My whole thing here is essentially that not once have we been forced to not fund a specific club events or not fund a specific club in general, because their stance, for example, we have Conservative Concordia that was a club, and the truth of the matter is that many of their stances are against our positions book. We have a bunch of other clubs that also not all of them conform to our positions book. And student life is meant for students to have discussion, to be able to represent their communities, to be able to represent their political opinions and their political views. And that is always how the Clubs and Space Committee has viewed these types of requests, unless it goes against the constitution of the club, which is also approved by Clubs and Space Committee. So I just want to provide that knowledge. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Harrison. Hassan, go ahead.
Also, I would like to point out that we already do divestments, a term that the CSU has already chosen to adopt when pushing for outcomes they seek. For example, under the Ethics and Sustainability Policy adopted on May 5th, 2021 by the CSU Council, some of which are in the Zoom chat today. In section 6.2, the CSU, and I quote, the CSU shall actively encourage the divestment to adopt the university to adopt an official comprehensive strategy regarding sustainability that includes divestment from fossil fuels. So if we can apply divestments there, we can apply it with apartheid.
There was no application to our clubs, though, I don't
believe. Yeah, thank you, Hassan. Caleb, go ahead. Caleb?
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Great. I'd like to call the question.
All right. There's a motion to cut discussion and call the question. Is there a second for the motion?
Second.
Who is the second? Sorry. Oh, Calvin. Oh, sorry. Who is it?
Hassan.
Oh, Hassan. Sorry. My apologies, Hassan. All right. So there's motion to call the question. Is there any opposition to calling the question and moving to a vote? Opposition.
I'd like to oppose.
All right. So in that case, there is opposition. We will move to a vote, and it does require a 2/3 majority to pass. So I'll go through the list. If you're voting yes, it means you want to stop discussion and vote. If you're voting no, it means you do not. And if you're abstaining, it means you are abstaining. Does that make sense? All right. In that case, Samuel, how do you vote? I don't think Samuel is still here. Wawa, how do you vote?
Abstain.
Abstain. Lauren, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. Jeremiah, how do you vote?
I'm ready to vote.
All right. So that's a yes. Howard, how do you vote?
Abstain.
Abstain. Noah, how do you vote? I don't think Noah's here. Hirsch, how do you vote?
No.
No. Idel, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. Shania, how do you vote? Shania's not here. Butaina, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. Alina, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. Chris, how do you vote?
No.
No. Ikram, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. Lily, how do you vote?
Abstain.
Abstain. Calvin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. Nathaniel, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. Caleb, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. Marissa, how do you vote? Oh, Marissa's not here. Kate, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. And Hassan, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. All right. Is there anyone I forgot? Don't think there is. Sorry, I'm just pulling out my phone to calculate. So that is 11 yes, 2 no, and 3 abstention. 11 over 13 is 85. So we do have the requisite 2/3, and we'll move to a vote on the main motion. And if folks want to be reminded of the motion, let me just share my screen. So that is this. So just a reminder, this was the motion, the preamble with the whereas, the question itself, and then the definitions from the Google Doc that were voted on to be included in the motion at the end, with the summary and the link to the complete definition at the end. Yes, Butaina? Sorry?
I was just wondering, for the long definition, will be presented in that order on the internet page that students are going to be consulting?
That
or
was
is it that you're compiling the information to present to the CEO? I don't know if my question is clear.
I mean, I give them like the question as council votes on it, and then the CEO has a limited power to change the question if they find something prejudicial, but that I don't think that's related to your question right now.
It's
Yeah, I
just
think
what you're
I
showing,
phrased it
Caitlin.
wrong.
Sorry?
I'll just finish, Lauren, and then you can go just a second. Because I think we had agreed on preamble, question, summary, link, and then the long definition. I don't think we even agreed on the long definition. The link will provide the long definition.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. That was in the, sorry, I just taken it from the Google Doc. That is true. That was not there. My bad. Yes, Lauren?
No, like put it back.
Was that not what we had agreed on?
That's not what my amendment was. So the summary, I don't know who, like.
Oh, sorry. I think this was.
Yes, it was the second paragraph, I think.
Yes, it's the second paragraph.
Oh, yes. Sorry.
So there's no summary. It's just that second paragraph is the quote unquote summary.
Yes, sorry. I copied the wrong thing.
Delete that, and then it should be that link. Yes, that's what we agreed on.
Whew. Thank you very much for that. That was almost very stressful. But yes, that is what we agreed upon. So my apologies. Yes, that said, yes, Lauren? Or was that still your hand up from before?
I was just talking about what the amendment actually said.
All right. Okay. So in that case, this is what we agreed to vote upon. So if you are voting yes to the motion, that means you want to send this to referendum. If you are voting no, that means you do not want it to send to referendum. And if you are abstaining, that means that you are abstaining. Just clarify, Butaina, I answered your question, right? Okay, perfect. All right. I just want to make sure we are all in agreement with what we're voting on. So that is that. Is there anything else before we move to a vote? Like not comments, just logistical comments. Okay, good. I just want to make sure we're 100% good with the logistics. So once again, I will repeat it so there's no confusion. If you're voting yes, it means you want this to go to referendum. If you're voting no, it means you do not. And if you're abstaining, then you are abstaining. Samira.
I have a quick question. If just to make sure, if yes, then moving to referendum, meaning that it will be voted on by students, right? And then we approved by council? Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, so it goes from council to referendum, and then at referendum, it's voted on by the students. So saying yes to this today does not mean it's being adopted today. It just means that you're sending it to referendum, and then the students will decide.
Awesome, thanks.
Not a problem. Any other clarifications before we move on? All right, great. Samuel, how do you vote? I think.
Abstain.
Oh, all right, abstain. Thank you. Wawa, how do you vote?
Abstain.
Abstain. Lauren, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. Emmanuel, don't think is here. Jeremiah, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. Howard, how do you vote?
Abstain.
Abstain. Noah, how do you vote? Noah's not here. Hirsch, how do you vote?
Please return to me later.
Yeah, no problem. Edel, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. Shania, how do you vote? Oh, Shania might not be here anymore. Butaina, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. Alina, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. Chris, how do you vote?
I'm going to abstain.
Abstain. Ikram, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. Lily, how do you vote?
I'll abstain.
Abstain. Calvin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. Nathaniel, how do you vote?
You come back the last one. So yes.
All right. Oh, you're not the last one, but thanks.
That's
for Caleb, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. Marissa, how do you vote? Oh, Marissa might not be here anymore. Kate, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. And Hassan, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. And going back to Hirsch, how do you vote?
No, and please note it in the minutes.
All right, no and noted. Is there anyone I forgot? I don't believe so. All right, so with that, I'll call the vote. So that is 11 yes, 1 no, and 5 abstain. So the motion carries, and I will send that to the CEO after the meeting. Yes, Hirsch.
I'd like to take a minute to point out something which I think many people have missed, but that's fine. They'll find it out one day, one way or another. Going down the path of defunding clubs, there's a reason we don't generally want to go down that path. Trust me, this is something that you're opening a massive can of worms that can explode in many directions, which either you do not foresee or you just assume will never happen. Even if I'm wrong about that, that's fine. Like, in the sense that I stand by my no, in the sense that you are intentionally stating that your goal is to hurt people. And to defund clubs and so on and so forth. So whether or not it ends up blowing up in anyone's face,
I thought we weren't able to comment on intention.
Just avoid please commenting on people's motivations.
Okay. I'm going to actually just clarify. It's not a threat. It's just an observation that when you open certain cans of worms, it goes in certain directions that are sometimes unforeseeable.
This has been about anti-apartheid and taking concrete steps to address apartheid. It hasn't been about...
All right. Okay, this is getting a little bit off the rails. This will be sent to referendum. Thank you for bringing up all of your points, folks, and for coming out. I feel that if the discussion continues, it's not going to be in a productive manner since there's really nothing else to decide on. But that said, I do very much appreciate everybody who came out to the meeting to voice their concerns, their opinions, to ask their questions. We really do notice when the student body takes an interest in the CSU, so that's really great that folks came out. The discussion was, for the most part, respectful, and I very much appreciate that. I know that it is a very difficult topic, and thank you very much for coming out and discussing it and providing differences of opinion. It is always very much appreciated to see people, like I said, taking an interest in the CSU. It is a little bit late though, so once again, thank you for staying until the end. That said, if there's nothing further on this agenda point, we can move on to question period and business arising. So does anybody have any questions or business arising that came out of the meeting? Yes, Lauren?
I mean, it was on the last point. I just wanted to say something on Hirsch's point, but not in a, it has to do with, but not really. I
don't want us to go down the path of back and forth.
It's not back and forth though. It's just to for clubs. Cause when I worked cause I've been on finance committee for a long time. I've been on sponsorship committee, and dealing with clubs and seeing how the money flows from the CSU to the clubs. The CSU can stop funding or divest funding from clubs, but that doesn't necessarily stop clubs from seeking their own funding to sponsor and fund their own events as they see fit. So if they manage to source funding that is outside of the CSU, they can, the CSU has no purview over how they can spend that money.
Great. Thank you for clarifying. Hannah, go ahead.
I just had a point on the point before when we did the motion about the committees that are being sent to appointments committee, the appointments.
Yes. Yes, that's true. That is a very good thing to bring up. Yes, thank you. Go ahead.
We took a motion that the mental health committee seats would go to the appointments committee, and I just... we had passed the policy, an updated policy back in September, on September 23rd, to have the mental health committee included in the policy on council, on executive council and committees. So I just wanted to add that to the motion, that we are notwithstanding section 4.1.9 of the policy on executive council and committees when sending that to appointments committee.
Yes, thank you very much for that. Actually, could you just make it official? Sorry, I know you just kind of spoke already, but it is something that needs to be done. Could you just make an official motion to amend the motion previously adopted to add that on?
I motion to amend the motion previously adopted to add in that we are notwithstanding section 4.1.9 of the policy on executive council and committees.
All right, thank you. Do we have a second? Yeah, thanks, Hirsch. This is referring to the, my gosh, sorry, I'm losing my words. Like Hannah said, this is referring to the vote that we had taken on the appointments for committees before. Do you want to motivate again? Or did you have anything to add, Hannah?
No, I think it's just like that I was looking at the wrong document when I was looking at that. And the mental health committee actually did pass back in September. We had updated the policy back then, so I just want to make sure that it's all in line with our regulations in that regard.
All right, perfect. So is there any opposition to adding the notwithstanding clause onto the previous motion to change the counselor seat to student at-large seats on mental health committee? Any opposition? Going once, twice. All right, so that carries unanimously. Thank you so much for that, Hannah. That was a good catch. And yes, Mohammed.
So I have a comment and a question. Can I do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So my comment is, and it's related to the question I'm going to ask right now. After what Hirsch said, I believe personally, I condemn apartheid. I condone apartheid. I'm sorry, I don't condone apartheid. I agree with what the UN says about apartheid, obviously. It's not that. It's just that I share the concerns of Hirsch that there's defunding of clubs, which would be a very polarizing issue, I believe. And with more polarization, I believe that this will create conflict between students, and this is something that we really need to avoid. Considering that this is a text, a legal issue that requires justification, requires people to interpret, qualified people. So you're saying that you want to subject this to a committee. How do we know? This is my question. How do we know that this committee has qualified people who are able to interpret this text correctly without any biases? And it's not just about, I think that restricting it to Israel and this entire issue is missing the point. Apartheid can happen all across the world. So who's interpreting this text, and is he a qualified person? That's what I want to ask.
I don't want to get too far down this rabbit hole because we're talking about hypotheticals that haven't happened yet, but can anyone provide a quick response to that?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, it's an important point, and it's a point that was, I think, touched upon by Hadassah earlier. And it's that it's not going to be in the hands of the committee and their wants and their judgment. It's just subjective. It's going to be clear guidelines. So, for example, this is an example where we're all going to work on this later on, of course. But an example would be just state your I don't know, I forgot the word in English, but show your opposition to those actions. Show it clearly, state it, make it official, and then you can have access to funding. So it's not going to be subjective. It's not going to be in that sense, and we would all have to agree with that. Those guidelines, we would all discuss them together, obviously. So this is kind of a first step that we did. There are a lot of first steps that will follow, but this is the idea. And just to touch upon really quickly upon Hirsch's comment, it's really quick about the can of worms. I just want to say, and it's my opinion, but I think, let's imagine we were just a few years ago. Let's say we had an organization that was openly supporting the KKK. Then I would gladly open that can of worm. okay, I would gladly do it. And I hope other people would too. Like it's greater than that. Apartheid, if we all agree that it's wrong, why would it be a wrong action to take active steps against it? I guess that's something I'm not fully understanding. But yeah, that was my point.
All right, thank you, Ikram. Hirsch, go ahead.
Okay, so I guess I raised my hand to refer to Mohammed's comment, but I guess I'll venture into Ikram's first. So, I mean, I think we can all agree apartheid is bad, but where I sort of go, yeah, this motion, well, first off, I guess I'll start with the obvious thing. Amnesty International's founder has openly stated that they do apply the term apartheid to a particular country for the explicit goal of, they make sure to release a report applying that label before they go to fundraise in certain countries. So when we refer to them as a leading international human rights organization, there is sort of a giant asterisk there that ought to be there that isn't. Now, regarding Mohammed's comment, I guess this is somewhere where me and my colleagues have a difference of opinion. Having seen certain things that I won't go into in the past, as I said before, the can of worms being opened is being opened in a manner that can impact a lot more clubs than one would think, both ones which are obvious to the mind and also ones which are not. I actually don't think, as I said before, that this is a can of worms that ought to have been opened. And again, my colleagues disagreed with me. So for that point, I'd say, well, yeah, it's not quite being decided in a manner, well, whatever. I'm not going to question my colleagues' judgment, be it now or future counselors who may have a different interpretation of many, many, many different things. And with that, I cede my time to the chair.
All right, thank you, Hirsch. So with that, if there's nothing further on questions and business arising, we can move on to announcements. So this is the part of the meeting where if anyone is representing not representing, but if anyone wants to announce a club event, a CSU event, anything going on at school, this is the time. Yeah, Aria, go ahead.
I just want to state that Reggie's is open. So if you guys want to go grab a drink, perfect place to hang out.
All right. Thank you, Aria. Jeremiah, go ahead.
I have some good news regarding Space Concordia. Not only have we started already with going to different schools, but like we've had We've had 4 events so far, and they've all gone smoothly. So that's good news. It's proof that we're able to get things in full swing and be able to function. And so that's it. I think we're going to be only going up from here, and I think that's good.
All right. Thank you, Jeremiah. Is there anything else folks want to announce? Yeah, Shivani, go ahead.
I guess Valentine's Day event related. There are 2 movie nights happening on Friday. Focus, the Filipino club, is doing a screening of Hello, Love, Goodbye. And Kutam, the Tamil club, is also doing a screening of Jeans, which is a movie with Aishwarya Rai. That is all.
All right. Thank you, Shivani. Is there anything else folks want to announce? All right. So in that case, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Oh, somebody just said, yes, Center for Gender Advocacy, if you would like to announce that on the video.
On Valentine's Day, there is also a march to honor our missing and murdered Indigenous women at Cabot Square starting at 6.
All right. Thank you very much for that as well. One last chance for announcements. Okay. So if not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I think I heard Lauren, maybe. Was that you, Lauren? Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
All right. Sorry, I guess it is Lauren then. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Aria. Is there any opposition to adjourning? All right, folks. Then this meeting is adjourned. It is 8:58. I know CUTV live streamed. If anyone wants the recording, I've told a couple of people already. It's going to be on the Zoom cloud. You can just send me an email or message, and I will send you the link and the password. But I'll give you the caveat that because the recording space is limited, it'll probably get deleted after about a month, maybe. So if you want to keep it, make sure to download it. And with that, I will wish everybody a good night. Once again, thank you for coming out. And I will see you at the next regular meeting in March, or I believe there's a special council meeting planned for other referendum questions as well. So that said, have a great night, everybody, and stay safe, take care of yourselves. And that is all.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, Caitlin. Goodbye.
Thanks, Caitlin.